I was bleeding through a miscarriage when my husband said, "It's not like we can do anything tonight." Then he left and came home smelling like whiskey. I lost our baby on my husband's birthday. I still hate saying it that way because it sounds like I'm trying to make the story darker than it was. But that was the day it happened. The day I found out there was no heartbeat. We had been trying for a baby for almost a year. Not long compared to some couples I know. I'm not trying to act like 11 months made me some fertility warrior. But it was long enough for hope to start hurting. Long enough for me to stop telling Daniel when I thought I might be late. Long enough for sex to become something we pretended was spontaneous, even when we both knew I had counted days and checked an app and stared at cheap ovulation tests under the bathroom light. When I finally got the positive test, I did not do a cute announcement. I just walked out of the bathroom with my hand over my mouth. Daniel was in the kitchen, half awake, pouring coffee. He looked at me and frowned because I think he thought I was sick. Then he saw the test in my hand. He froze. I handed it to him, and for a second, he just stared at it like he didn't trust his own eyes. Then he sat down at the kitchen table and cried. That is the part one keep going back to when people tell me he is heartless. Because he wasn't, not then. His face broke open. He held the test in both hands and kept whispering, "We're going to be parents." I remember laughing and crying at the same time. I remember him pulling me into his lap even though I told him he was going to spill coffee on both of us. I remember his hands shaking against my back. For those first few weeks, he was almost too sweet. He downloaded one of those pregnancy apps and checked it more than I did. He would say things like, "The baby is the size of a blueberry," while we were standing in the grocery store, like everyone around us needed to know. He touched my stomach at night, even though there was nothing to feel yet. He told his mother, Victoria, before I wanted anyone else to know, and yes, I was annoyed, but I also understood. He was excited. He wanted to share it. He wanted his mother to know she was going to be a grandmother. I let it go. That's something I did a lot in our marriage. I let things go because they were small. Daniel forgot to text when he was running late, but he came home with takeout. Daniel made plans without checking with me, but he would say, "I thought you'd want to come." Daniel talked over me when we were with his friends, but later he would kiss my forehead and say he got carried away. None of it felt big enough to fight about. Until the morning I started spotting. At first, it was just a little. A small amount of pink when I wiped. I stood in the bathroom staring at the toilet paper, feeling my heart move into my throat. Daniel was brushing his teeth beside me. I said, "I'm spotting." He stopped brushing and looked at me in the mirror. "Is that bad?" "I don't know." His eyes widened. "Should we go somewhere?" I called the nurse line. The nurse was calm, which helped for about 10 seconds. She said spotting could happen. She told me to rest, drink water, avoid lifting anything heavy, and call back if it got heavier or if I had cramping. Daniel sat beside me on the bed after I hung up. "It's probably okay," he said. I nodded because I wanted that to be true. He touched my knee and said, "Maybe you should skip dinner tomorrow if you're still nervous." Dinner. His birthday dinner. I had forgotten about it for maybe 20 whole minutes. Daniel had been talking about his birthday dinner for 2 weeks. His friend Joshua was coming in from out of town. A few other friends were meeting us at a restaurant downtown called the Copper Table. It wasn't supposed to be wild, just steak, drinks, and maybe another bar after. I had already told Daniel I wasn't sure I would stay out late because I had been exhausted and nauseous, but he kept saying, "Just come for dinner. You don't have to do the whole night." That was before the spotting. That night, I barely slept. I kept getting up to check. Sometimes it looked lighter, and I would calm down. Then it would be there again, and my chest would tighten. Daniel slept next to me, one arm over his head, breathing heavily like nothing in the world had changed. By morning, it was worse. Not a little worse. Worse enough that my hands went cold. I came out of the bathroom shaking. Daniel was standing by the closet, buttoning a dark blue shirt. His hair was damp from the shower. He smelled like the cologne he only used when we went out. I said, "Daniel, I'm bleeding more." He turned around. For 1 second, his face showed fear. Then his eyes moved to the clock. I saw it. I wish I hadn't, but I did. "How much more?" he asked. "Enough that I'm scared." "Are you cramping?" "A little." He rubbed his hands over his face. "Okay, call them." I called the clinic, and they told me to come in. Not the emergency room yet, but Boise Women's Clinic had weekend urgent appointments. They said they would do blood work and an ultrasound if needed. I hung up and turned to Daniel. He had his phone in his hand. I thought he was texting everyone to cancel. Instead, he said, "What time do you think we'll be back?" I stared at him. He must have seen my face because he immediately said, "I'm not saying I'm not going with you. I'm just asking." People are already driving. People are already driving. That was the first sentence that cracked something in me. I didn't yell. I didn't have the energy. I just said, "I don't know what time we'll be back. I'm bleeding." He nodded fast. I know. Let's just go." The ride to the clinic was quiet. He kept one hand on the steering wheel and one hand near mine, like he wanted credit for almost holding it. His phone buzzed twice in the cup holder. He glanced down both times. I asked, "Is that Joshua?" He said, "Probably." Then answer him. "I'm driving." "You were able to look." He didn't answer. At the clinic, everything felt too bright. The waiting room had soft gray chairs and a fake plant near the check-in desk. A woman across from me was very pregnant, one hand resting on her stomach, scrolling on her phone. I tried not to look at her because I didn't want to hate a stranger for still having what I was scared I was losing. Daniel sat beside me and bounced his knee. I said, "Can you stop?" He looked down like he didn't even realize he was doing it. "Sorry." A nurse named Emily called me back. She was gentle in a way that made me more afraid. She asked questions, took my blood pressure, gave me a cup for a urine sample, and told us the doctor wanted an ultrasound. Daniel took my hand then. For a moment, I softened. I thought maybe I had been too hard on him. Maybe he was scared and didn't know how to act. Maybe men do stupid practical things when they're terrified because they need something normal to hold on to. Then, while we were waiting for the ultrasound, his phone lit up again. I saw Joshua's name. Daniel turned the screen face down. I didn't say anything. I was too tired. I was too scared. The ultrasound room was dim and cold. Emily kept her voice calm as she moved the wand. She asked me to adjust my position. She clicked keys. She stared at the screen. I watched her face instead of the monitor. That was how I knew. People think you need someone to say the words, but sometimes you know before anyone tells you. You know from the silence. You know from the way a nurse stops making small talk. You know from the way your husband's hand suddenly feels like a stranger's hand around yours. Emily said she was going to get the doctor. Daniel whispered, maybe she just needs someone else to check. I nodded, but I did not believe it. Dr. Sarah came in a few minutes later. She was kind. I remember that. I remember her sitting down instead of standing over me. I remember her saying my name softly. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I'm not seeing cardiac activity." I stared at her. Daniel squeezed my hand hard. She kept talking, explaining things I only half heard. 9 weeks. Measuring small. Sometimes this happens. Nothing I did caused it. There would be options. My body might complete the miscarriage on its own, or I might need medication. I would need a follow-up. I should call if the bleeding became too heavy or if I had severe pain or a fever. I nodded like a polite person at a work meeting. Inside, I was gone. 9 weeks is early. I know people say that. Some people say it like comfort. Some people say it like correction. Like, don't grieve too much. Don't act like you lost a child. Don't make everyone uncomfortable. But that baby was already real to me. It was real when I stopped drinking coffee. It was real when I stood in Target touching a tiny gray onesie I did not need yet. It was real when Daniel kissed my stomach and whispered, "Hang in there, little blueberry." It was real when I calculated a due date and imagined whether the weather would be hot by then. You can lose a whole future before anyone else even sees it. After the appointment, I went into the bathroom alone. I sat on the closed toilet seat and cried into toilet paper because there were no tissues. It wasn't a pretty cry. It was quiet and ugly. My shoulders shook, and I kept trying to breathe because I was scared if I let the grief come out fully, I would not be able to stand up again. When I finally came out, Daniel was standing near the hallway, looking down at his phone. He quickly locked it. I said, "You can answer him." He looked guilty. "It's Joshua. He's just asking if we're still coming." I waited for him to say, I told him no. He didn't. I said, "Are we?" Daniel's mouth opened, then closed. "I mean, I didn't say that." "You didn't say what?" "I didn't say we were going. But you didn't say we weren't." He looked frustrated. "Grace, I'm trying to figure things out." I laughed once. It came out dry and sharp. "What is there to figure out?" He looked around like he was embarrassed someone might hear us. "Can we not do this here?" I didn't answer. I walked to the car. The drive home felt longer than the drive there. Boise looked normal outside the window. People were walking dogs. Cars were pulling into coffee shops. A man was unloading groceries from his trunk. It made me angry in a way I couldn't explain, that the world had not stopped when mine had. Daniel said, "I'm sorry." I kept looking out the window. He said, "I don't know what to say." I said, "Then don't say anything." So he didn't. When we got home, I went straight to the bedroom. I changed into loose pajama pants and climbed under the blanket even though I was not cold. I felt hollow and heavy at the same time. My body was still carrying the evidence of something my life had already lost. Daniel came in after a few minutes. He stood by the bed. "What do you want to do?" he asked. "Nothing." "Do you want food?" "No." "Do you want me to call my mom?" "No." He sat on the edge of the mattress. "Do you want me to cancel dinner?" That question still makes me feel sick. Not because he asked. Because he needed to ask. I turned my head and looked at him. "I want you to want to cancel dinner." His face tightened. "That's not fair." I blinked at him. He said, "I'm asking what you need. Isn't that what I'm supposed to do? You're supposed to know that your wife miscarrying means birthday dinner is canceled." He stood up. "I didn't say it wasn't." You're still talking like there's a choice. Because everyone already planned around this. I pushed myself up on one elbow. Everyone. You know what I mean. Joshua drove in. My friends got reservations. My mom was planning to come by tomorrow. It's not like this is easy for me either. I stared at him. I'm actively miscarrying. I know that. No, I don't think you do. He exhaled hard. Grace, I'm not trying to be cruel. I'm saying maybe sitting here all night is going to make it worse. Maybe getting out for an hour would help. Maybe seeing people would distract us. Us? He looked confused. I said, you keep saying us like you're the one bleeding. His face went red. That's not what I meant. What did you mean? I mean it's my loss too. I nodded slowly. Then act like it. That hit him. I saw it hit him. For a second, I thought he was going to break down. I thought he would crawl into bed beside me and say he was sorry and hold me while I cried. Instead, his jaw tightened. He said, it's not like there's anything we can do tonight. I went still. He seemed to realize immediately how bad it sounded because he took a step toward me. Grace, I mean medically. I mean the doctor said. Get out. What? Get out of the room. He looked hurt, like I had wounded him. Like I was being cruel. Fine, he said quietly. He left. I heard him moving around the house. A cabinet opened. A drawer closed. His footsteps went down the hall and back. I thought, for one small stupid moment, that he was getting comfortable. Maybe changing out of his nice shirt. Maybe making tea. Maybe canceling everything. Then I heard the front door. I sat up too fast and pain shot through my lower stomach. A minute later, his truck started. He left. I don't know how long I sat there staring at the bedroom doorway. Maybe 10 minutes. Maybe an hour. Time got strange. The cramps got worse. I went to the bathroom and saw more blood. I cleaned myself up with shaking hands, then stood there gripping the sink, staring at my own face. I did not look like a woman whose husband had just gone to a birthday dinner. I looked like someone abandoned at the scene of an accident. I called my sister, Natalie. The second she answered, I started crying so hard she could barely understand me. She kept saying, Grace, breathe. What happened? Where is Daniel? I told her. There was silence on the line. Then she said, he went where? I said, dinner. With people. Yes. While you're miscarrying? Hearing someone else say it made it real in a different way. I said, I don't want to be alone. I'm coming. I told her not to, because that is what women do even when they are desperate. We apologize for needing help. We say it's fine when it is not fine. Natalie ignored me. She arrived 20 minutes later in leggings, a sweatshirt, and no makeup, holding a pharmacy bag and looking angrier than I had ever seen her. She came into the bedroom, saw me curled up with a heating pad, and her face crumpled. Oh, Grace. That was all it took. I broke. She climbed into bed next to me and held me while I cried. She didn't tell me everything happened for a reason. She didn't say we could try again. She didn't mention Daniel grieving differently. She just held me and let me be ugly and devastated. Later, she made me drink water. She helped me change the sheets when I bled through a little. She checked the paperwork from the clinic and set an alarm for medication. She sat on the floor beside the bed and rubbed my arm until I stopped shaking. Daniel texted around 9. Are you okay? I stared at the message. Natalie saw my face and said, is that him? I handed her the phone. She read it and laughed, but not because it was funny. Are you okay? She repeated. Wow. I didn't respond. At 10:30, he texted again. I'm going to head home soon. I didn't drink much. Natalie said, he shouldn't have drunk at all. I still didn't respond. At midnight, I heard the truck. Natalie stood up so fast the chair scraped against the floor. I said, don't. I'm not going to hit him. That doesn't make me feel better. I'm not going to yell either. She opened the bedroom door and stood in the hallway. Daniel came in quietly, like if he made no noise, the night would be less wrong. He smelled like whiskey, grilled meat, and cold air. His shirt was untucked. His eyes were glassy, not drunk exactly, but not sober either. He stopped when he saw Natalie. Oh, he said. Natalie crossed her arms. Yeah. Oh. He looked past her into the bedroom. Grace. I sat up. Did you have fun? I asked. He closed his eyes. Please don't do this. That made something inside me snap. Don't do what? Turn this into something uglier than it already is. I almost laughed. I'm sorry. Did I make your birthday miscarriage ugly? His face twisted. That's not what I said. You left me. You told me you wanted space. I told you to get out of the room because you said there was nothing we could do tonight. I meant medically. You went to dinner. I came home. At midnight. I was trying not to fall apart. Natalie made a sound under her breath, but I held up my hand because I needed to say it myself. I looked at Daniel and said, you're a disgrace. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just said it. Quietly. That seemed to hurt him more. His face changed. The guilt disappeared, and anger came up in its place. Wow, he said. On my birthday too. Natalie stepped forward. Are you serious right now? Daniel rubbed his forehead. I can't do this with both of you. I said, then leave. This is my house too. Then sleep on the couch. He looked at me like he expected me to take it back. I didn't. So he slept on the couch. The next morning, Victoria came over with soup. I didn't invite her. Daniel did. I was in the guest room by then because I couldn't stand the smell of him in our bed. Natalie had stayed the night, and she opened the door when Victoria knocked. I heard their voices from the hallway. Victoria said, I'm here to see my son and Grace. Natalie said, Grace is resting. I brought food. That's nice. There was a long silence. Then Victoria said, is Daniel here? He's on the couch. I should not have laughed, but I did. Just once, into my pillow. Victoria came into the room a few minutes later. She looked genuinely sad. Her eyes were red, and she had a container of soup in her hands. Oh, honey, she said. She sat on the edge of the bed and hugged me. I let her. For a moment, I needed someone older to hold me. I needed a mother, even if she was his mother. She cried and said she was sorry. She said she had been so excited. She said the baby would have been so loved. Then, after a few minutes, she ruined it. She said, Daniel told me everything. He is devastated too, Grace. Men just don't always know how to show it. I pulled back. Victoria touched my hand. I'm not excusing him leaving. That was wrong. But he was overwhelmed. He said you told him you wanted to be alone. Natalie, who had been quiet near the doorway, said she didn't. Victoria looked startled. I said I told him I wasn't going to dinner. He decided that meant he could. Victoria's mouth tightened. Not at Daniel. At the discomfort of the truth being spoken plainly. She said, I think he panicked. I said, he drank whiskey. He made a mistake. He told his friends I wasn't feeling well. That part came later, but I didn't know it yet. At that moment, I only knew he had left. I only knew his mother was already smoothing the edges. Making it softer. Making it easier for people to swallow. That became the pattern for the next few days. Daniel apologized, but every apology had a hook hidden inside it. I'm sorry I went, but I didn't know what you needed. I'm sorry I stayed so late, but I was embarrassed to explain everything. I'm sorry I drank, but I wasn't thinking clearly. I'm sorry I said the birthday thing, but you calling me a disgrace really hurt me. Every time, he handed me pain and asked me to carry his too. I could barely carry my own. The physical part was worse than I expected. Nobody tells you how cruel miscarriage can be. People use soft words, like loss, like nature, like common. But it was blood and cramps and tissue and panic. It was sitting on the toilet crying because I didn't know what was normal and what was too much. It was checking the clinic instructions over and over. It was being afraid to flush. It was feeling betrayed by my body and then guilty for blaming it. Daniel tried to help after that first night. He brought water. He asked if I needed the heating pad. He made toast. He hovered in doorways. But his kindness felt late. It felt like flowers placed beside a house he had already set on fire. On the third day, I got a text from Joshua. I didn't know Joshua well. He was Daniel's college friend, the kind who showed up twice a year and acted like no time had passed. He was loud, friendly, and usually harmless. His message said, Hey Grace. I just heard what actually happened. I'm so sorry. I had no idea. Daniel told us you weren't feeling well and wanted him to still come. I feel awful. I read it 3 times. Not because I didn't understand. Because I did. Daniel had not just gone to dinner. He had protected himself while doing it. He had told them I wasn't feeling well. He had told them I wanted him to come. I walked into the kitchen where Daniel was rinsing a mug. I held up my phone. What did you tell them? He looked confused. Who? Joshua. His face went pale. That told me everything. I said, what did you tell your friends? He shut off the faucet. Grace. No. Say it. He leaned against the counter. I didn't want to tell everyone private details. So you lied. I said you weren't feeling well. I was miscarrying. I know. You said I wanted you to go. He looked down. I said, did you? He didn't answer. I felt my voice go calm, and that scared me more than yelling. Daniel, did you tell your friends that I wanted you to go to dinner while I was miscarrying? He whispered, I didn't say it like that. How did you say it? He rubbed both hands over his face. I said you were resting and you didn't want a big thing made of it. I laughed. It was empty. A big thing. I panicked. You keep saying that like panic writes fake stories for you. He looked wounded. I was ashamed. No. You were managing your image. That sentence landed between us like something heavy. He didn't deny it. That was the second betrayal. The first was leaving. The second was making sure nobody knew what he was leaving me in. I packed a bag that afternoon. Daniel followed me from room to room saying, please don't do this right now. I said, I'm not divorcing you right now. I'm leaving the house right now. Grace, please. Stay. We can talk. I don't want to talk in the house where you left me bleeding. His face crumpled then. Real tears. Real regret. Maybe real grief too. He said, I don't know what's wrong with me. I almost went to him. That is the awful part. I almost comforted him. Even after everything, some trained part of me wanted to make him feel better because I knew how ashamed he was. But then I remembered sitting on the toilet with blood on my hands while he was at the copper table. I zipped the bag. Natalie picked me up and took me to her apartment. For 4 nights, I slept on her couch because her guest room was full of storage boxes. She apologized for that at least 10 times. I told her the couch was perfect because it did not smell like Daniel. She did not push me to leave him. She didn't push me to stay either. She just let me exist. On the second night, she said, "Do you want my honest opinion?" I said no. She nodded. Okay. Then, after a minute, I said yes. She sat beside me on the couch. I don't think he's evil, she said. I think he's weak. And sometimes weak people do the cruelest things because they are more afraid of looking bad than being bad. That stayed with me. Because that was Daniel. He wasn't a monster. He wasn't some cartoon villain laughing while I suffered. He was worse in a more ordinary way. He was a man who wanted to be good, but still chose comfort when goodness required sacrifice. He wanted to be seen as loving without doing the hardest parts of love. He wanted the role of grieving father without missing the party. Daniel texted every day. At first, I ignored most of them. Then he started leaving voice messages. I'm sorry. I should have canceled immediately. I should have told everyone the truth. I don't know why I cared what they thought. The house feels wrong without you. I went into the spare room today and I broke down. That message made me angry. Not because I didn't believe him. I did. I believed he cried in that room. I believed the grief finally caught up with him when the house was quiet and nobody was clapping him on the back or buying him birthday drinks. But I hated that he seemed to understand the loss only after I was gone. On the 4th night, he asked if we could meet somewhere neutral. I almost said no. Then I thought about the tiny gray onesie still hidden in my dresser. I thought about the ultrasound photo tucked inside my discharge papers. I thought about the life we had wanted before that day ruined everything. So I agreed. We met at a coffee shop near Natalie's apartment. I chose a corner table. Daniel arrived looking like he had not slept. His hair was messy. His eyes were swollen. He held a paper cup but didn't drink from it. He sat down across from me and said, I don't deserve you coming here. I said, don't start with lines. He nodded. Okay. For once, he listened. I said, I need you to tell me the truth. Not the version that makes you look confused. Not the version where you were grieving differently. The truth. He stared at the table. Then he said, I wanted to go. The words hurt, but they also felt like the first clean thing he had said. He kept going. I knew I should cancel. I knew it the second you said you were bleeding more. But I kept thinking maybe the clinic would say everything was okay. Then when it wasn't, I didn't know how to switch. Everyone was texting. Joshua had driven in. I felt trapped between being the husband I knew I should be and the person I had already told everyone I was going to be that night. I said, the birthday guy. He flinched. Yes. I looked out the window because I didn't want him to see my face. He said, and then I made it worse because I was ashamed. I didn't want them to know I left you like that. So I made it sound like you didn't want me there. I turned back to him. That is the part one don't know how to forgive. I know. No. I don't think you do. Leaving was cruel. Lying made it calculated. His eyes filled. I know. I shook my head. Stop saying that unless you actually understand. He swallowed. Then he said, I made your worst day about my disappointment. And then I lied so nobody would know. I didn't just fail you. I protected myself from the consequences of failing you. That was the first time I cried in front of him since the clinic. Because finally, he had said it without asking me to make it smaller. He reached across the table, then stopped before touching my hand. I'm sorry, he said. No but. No excuse. I wanted that to fix something. It didn't. But it mattered. I came home the next day, not because I forgave him, but because I needed to see what was left. I moved into the guest room. Daniel did not argue. He carried my bag inside, put it by the door, and asked if I wanted him to leave the house for the night. I said no. I wanted him there. I also didn't want him near me. Grief is strange like that. We started counseling at Boise Family Counseling with Robert. Daniel found the place and made the appointment, but I made it clear that if he used counseling to perform sadness, I would walk out. The first session was uncomfortable. Robert asked what brought us in and Daniel looked at me. I said, he won his birthday dinner while I miscarried. Robert looked at Daniel. Daniel did not defend himself. He said yes. That one word did more for me than any apology he had given at home. In counseling, Daniel admitted things I didn't expect. He said he had always been terrified of disappointing people. He said birthdays were a big deal in his family because growing up, his father barely noticed them, and his mother overcompensated. He said he liked being the fun one, the easy one, the man people could count on for a good time. Robert asked him, and what did Grace need you to be that night? Daniel looked at me. He said, her husband. I had to look away. Because yes, that was all. I didn't need a speech. I didn't need him to fix the miscarriage. I didn't need him to know the perfect thing to say. I needed him to stay. After counseling started, Daniel changed. I won't pretend he didn't. He cooked without asking if I was hungry. He cleaned the bathroom without making a show of it. He came to my follow-up appointment and sat beside me in silence. When Dr. Sarah asked how I was doing emotionally, Daniel didn't answer for me. He just held my hand and let me speak. He also called Joshua and told him the truth. I didn't ask him to do that. He told me afterward. He said, I told him I lied. I told him you didn't want me to go. I told him I left anyway. I asked why. Because I don't want comfort I earned by making you look cold. Joshua texted me again later. He said, Daniel told me the full truth. I'm sorry I was part of that night. I would have dragged him home myself if I had known. I believed him. But even that reopened the wound, because it proved how easy it would have been. If Daniel had simply told the truth, someone might have said, what are you doing here? Go home to your wife. He had avoided that because he knew what the answer would be. Victoria was harder. She kept trying to help in ways that felt like control. She brought food. She sent prayer quotes. She texted me things like, marriage is tested in hard seasons. I finally replied, please stop making my miscarriage a lesson. She didn't answer for a day. Then she called Daniel crying. He came to the guest room door and said, my mom is upset. I looked at him. He closed his eyes and said, that is not your problem. I'll handle it. And he did. I heard him in the kitchen later, voice low but firm. Mom, stop. You don't get to tell her how to process this. I left. I lied. She doesn't owe me peace so you can feel better. It was the first time I heard him choose me when it cost him something. I cried quietly into my pillow, not because everything was fixed, but because for once, he did the right thing without making me beg for it. A few weeks later, I opened the spare room. I hadn't gone in since before the miscarriage. Daniel had, but I hadn't. The room still smelled faintly like cardboard and dust. There was a box in the corner with the little gray onesie inside. I had put it there when I came home from Natalie's because I couldn't stand seeing it in my dresser anymore. Daniel stood behind me in the hallway. Do you want me to leave you alone? He asked. I said no. We sat on the floor together. I opened the box. The onesie was folded on top of the ultrasound photo. There was also an envelope I had not seen before. I looked at Daniel. He said, that's the letter I asked if I could write. I didn't want to give it to you until you were ready. I picked it up, then put it back down. I'm not ready. He nodded. Okay. No hurt face. No pressure. No making it about him. Just okay. That helped more than the letter could have. The original due date would have been in late spring. Daniel put it in his calendar, not as a sad performance, but because he asked me if I wanted the day remembered. I said yes, but I didn't know how. On that day, we drove out to a quiet park outside Boise. We did not bring balloons. We did not make a big social media post. We did not turn it into content for other people to react to. We brought the gray onesie, the ultrasound photo, and a small wooden box Daniel made himself. I wasn't sure about burying anything because it felt dramatic and also not enough. But Natalie said grief rituals are for the living, not the dead, and that made sense to me. So we buried the box beneath a tree near the edge of the park. Daniel cried. I cried too, but quietly. Afterward, he said, I wish I had been this man that night. I said, so do I. He nodded like he deserved that answer. That is where we are now. We are still married. I know some people will think I'm weak for that. I know others will say marriage means forgiveness and I should stop punishing him. I don't agree with either side completely. I'm not staying because I forgot. I'm not staying because he cried. I'm not staying because his mother wants us to be fine or because people say men are bad at grief. I'm staying for now because Daniel finally stopped asking me to make his mistake easier to forgive. He stopped defending the worst version of himself. He stopped hiding behind panic and shame and birthday plans. And I need time to see if this changed him or just scared him. We sleep in the same bed again, but not every night. Some nights I still go to the guest room because I wake up angry. Daniel does not follow me. He does not sigh. He does not say, are we still doing this? He just lets me go. That sounds small, but it isn't. I still think about that night. I think about him buttoning his shirt while I stood in the bathroom doorway bleeding. I think about his phone lighting up in the clinic. I think about him asking what time we would be back. I think about him walking through the front door at midnight smelling like whiskey while my body was letting go of the baby we both said we wanted. I also think about the coffee shop when he finally told the truth. I think about him telling his mother to stop. I think about him sitting on the floor beside me in the spare room, accepting that I did not want to read his letter yet. Maybe people can fail horribly and still become better. Maybe one terrible night can reveal a person's weakness without defining their whole soul. Or maybe I'm just trying to make meaning out of something that should have ended my marriage the second he walked out the door. I don't know yet. What I do know is this. I lost our baby once. I refuse to lose myself trying to protect Daniel from the consequences of what he did. So I'm taking my time. I'm watching his actions. I'm letting the grief be ugly when it needs to be. And I am not promising forgiveness on anyone's schedule but mine. Am I wrong for staying while still believing my husband showed me something that night I may never fully unsee?